aktivni. Če ima kdo problem z jezikom, bo Anja z veseljem prevedla. Če koga kaj zanima, drugače pa vam ga predajam in je na voljo za vprašanja. Hvala.
Here I am.
Yeah,
please.
Is it your habit to come some days before the gig?
If I haven't been to a country or a town, then I try and I have a great job and I get to see the world, and it's difficult if you just come for you arrive in the afternoon, you sleep, you do the gig, you leave in the morning. It's frustrating. You get no flavour of where you are. You lose the sense of where you are, and I don't like that. I mean, as I say, I'm very lucky in my job, and you know, you come from Ireland, this small island on the last stop of Europe, and when I was a child, I always wanted to leave and see the world. So I'm seeing the world and feeling it, you know, and tasting it and smelling it, and that's what interests me.
And what flavor did you get out of Maribora?
Well, it was pissing rain yesterday, so it was like I was at home, you know. I don't know yet. Look, ask me in 3 days. I've rented a car and I'll drive into the countryside and stop in some of the villages and get lost. And I'll you know, there will be a distinct something that I won't be able to immediately identify. But if I think then of maybe Slovenia or Maribora, and years later I'll have a sense of it in my head, you know, and maybe then I can define it. But, you know, it is different. Of course it's different, you know. I mean, I walked around with David in the rain last night and went to the cafe on the corner, and beautiful place, and the music was cool and the cake was excellent and the coffee was good and the people there were very cool. And of course you get these places everywhere in the world, but it was different. Maybe that the size of the place, and you know, it was a ballroom before, I think, and I just liked it, you know. If I didn't like it, I'd fuck off and go somewhere else, you know, and spend the 2 days somewhere else.
You're most known by the activism, by your humanitarian work.
That's not true. I'm known as a genius musician, actually.
That too, of course. If we talk about that one before, why?
Why what?
Why activism? Why humanitarian work?
Because it is possible to change things. The individual is not powerless in the face of tragedy or in the face of a lack of justice. The individual is not powerless. And I learned that from rock and roll. You know, again, when I was a child, things weren't good. You know, when I was a kid, we didn't have money, and my mother was dead when I was 7 or something. My dad used to sell towels around the countryside of Ireland. So you get a sense, you know, this is shit, you know, and I don't want it to be shit. And, you know, into this life comes the sound and the noise of possibility, which is rock and roll. It's the sound of frustration, obviously, from the blues, and the possibility of change. You know, if the African-American musicians gave us the sound of radical frustration, then the English pop singers used that and gave it the idea, yes, it's frustrating, but ultimately there's the possibility of change, of optimism and youth and sexuality. So that's the jump. And that's what I got, the language of other universes, of change, whether it's Dylan or Keith and Mick or John and Paul or Pete Townsend. It was all about that. And so, if you're 7 and 8 and things are not good, you just absorb that. Here's the one thing telling you it's not shit. Here's this golden thread coming out of the sky. So it's true. So that's why I was able to do those things.
Is that in Irish blood?
Is that an Irish what?
Yes, this rebellious, this call to help someone.
No, I mean, it's not necessary that if you're an artist that you do that stuff. I mean, the job of the artist is only to create good art, and they only fail when they create bad art. But if you as an individual are inclined to do other things, then that's separate from art. It just happens that the only possible job that I could get would be to be a pop singer. So I used that job. If you're a fireman or if you're a guy or a woman doing cold calls on the telephone circuit, maybe you can use that. I don't know. But, it's relatively easy because I can be on television, I can be on the radio, so I can talk about those things. So it seems to have more of an impact, but it's not unusual. I mean, millions of people do this shit,
But the music has the power.
I'm not sure the music has the power. I think I don't think songs or music changes anything of itself. But it can, if you're somebody like Bob Dylan and the listener is a very young person, it can inform you. It can activate your mind. You can realize the brain. That's if you're in certain conditions that respond to it. Other people get different things from it. But music by itself is not the instrument of change. That requires usually some sort of social act or collective action. So you can use music. In my case, I used it because in the 1980s, pop music was now the lingua franca of the planet. And so you could talk to everybody through this language. And many of those bands, all those bands were selling millions of records, tens of millions. So you could talk to every one of those people about something. So music, the story of the Pied Piper, do you? The piper who collected all the rats in Hamelin and drowned them. I think it's a Czechoslovakian story. And so, music can be the Pied Piper. It can bring people to something, but then you have to convince them of an argument. But I don't think that works anymore. I don't think that can work in the digital age. I don't think these things are useful for that in a musical sense. You can use this in different ways.
So today you think it's not possible to make some changes like you did in the 80s with the music, with today's popular music?
No, that's what I said. It doesn't have the same cultural resonance. Rock and roll, I think, as an idea is finished. I think the rock and roll age is over. Maybe 50 years, 1956 to 1996, maybe 2006, to be neat about it. But I don't think it has that, I don't think it's the central spine of the culture that it used to be. It used to be my social medium, but now that thing is the social medium. It's the actual, it's Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message now. but it's not very good for music, that thing. And it's not very good for, I don't believe, for discussion and debate. It's easy for authority, this thing. You know, this thing separates and divides. It doesn't unite. We have an impression of all being connected and therefore unified. That's ridiculous. You know, if all of us in this room think about some individual thing we would like to change, some individual problem, and we all go online now, within 1 hour, all of us individually will have 1,000 followers. And that's great for authority because they can separate it out. They can say, oh, I like your problem, I'll deal with that. And they say, the government is listening, or your problem, we listen to that. But if all of us in this room agree on one central issue, and we all go online now, then each of us has 1,000 people. And that's 30,000, that's 30,000 people. Now you're beginning to think politics, because politics are numbers. And so the diffusion of the medium has meant the dilution of the message. And so rock and roll doesn't have the central